And now, here's your host.
Welcome back to the program. I'm Zev Brenner. Earlier this week, I went to the Satmar Expo in New Jersey, and I missed it last year. This was the second annual Satmar Expo, and I was blown away to see the energy, to see so many people that have the business spirit. And we're going to explore what it's all about. And I believe there was over 5,000 people that were there. So first of all, I do want to thank Shmuel Mordechai Stern for helping put together the segment, for helping me navigate the Satmar Expo. He's an Askon, an activist with the UJ of Williamsburg in the Satmar community. And I also welcome back Rabbi David Niederman. He's the executive director of United Jewish Organization of Williamsburg. And Dr. Moshe Krakowski studies American Haredi education and culture, focusing on the relationship between communal worldview, identity, and education. He also works in the curriculum, cognition, and increased learning in Jewish educational settings. He's at Yeshiva University. Everyone, gentlemen, thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you. So let me understand. Like I said, I was very impressed. I went to this event this week, and it was really marvelous. But how did the Satmar Expo get off the ground? I know this was the second year. I missed it last year. People say, where were you? I said, well, this year, Mirza Hashem, I was going to be there, and I was there. So maybe we'll start with you, Rabbi David Niederman. How did this whole concept of having an expo showing off some of the best professional, the best business acumen in the community?
Let me just say, it's only natural that what happened, because this is our old trade line is we should make business, that the Torah teaches us that we should do business and tries to support our own. But just to go back more specific to this event, we in Satmar, the trademark of Satmar is Chesed. Starting off the Rebbe with Bikur Choilem, all kind of activities. Back in 71, I was already involved. At the time we started Raftov, the Rebbe started Raftov, an international agency for refugees. At the same time, launched an office specifically helping people to get jobs and businesses to get Heimische people and Heimische people to get jobs. So this is a continuation of different type of Chesed associations and division of the Kehillah. And Baruch Hashem, what we have seen is Kanai Nahara, thousands of businesses of our alumni, and we said, it's time we should bring them under one roof, let them meet, and I'm sure the businesses will double and triple. And according to what people say, there were more than $6.5 billion worth of businesses present. And so we tried it once. Nobody thought that it's going to be what it was. So Baruch Hashem, we tried it again. And let me just say, if I may, it came at the appropriate time. On one hand, you hear that the Satmar and the Hasidic community, these people are substantially unequivalent. They can't read English. They can't teach. They are, it's from Middle Ages. And here you see Yingalat, all ages. But young people who came out from our yeshivas 5 and 10 years ago and 15 years ago, and they're doing major businesses. In the fact that there wasn't any segment of the economy that was not represented over there. So this is a growth of doing chesed with us. This is a growth that the Rebbe taught us that we should do chesed with anybody and everybody. And we hope that this is going to be a good start for other kehillas should also do the same thing.
So let me turn to Professor Moshe Krakowski. I also mentioned he's a professor, director of the Fanya Gottesfeld Heller doctoral studies at the Azrieli Graduate School at Yeshiva University. So welcome to the program. And you heard Rabbi Niederman speak, and there's a perception out there that Hasidim don't have the business acumen, they don't have the education. You read the New York Times, you see all the negative stereotypes. When you go to an event like this and you see some very high-profile businesses, some really major companies that are there that are Satmar Hasidic owned and doing a tremendous amount of business. So it does shatter the stereotype. But I know you study this, so I'd like you to comment about that.
Yeah. So I actually think that the most interesting element here is not the major businesses, but the medium businesses. Meaning, I think that most people would acknowledge that there are very large businesses in the Satmar community, in the Hasidic community overall. I don't think a lot of people realize, however, that the economy is not just the really large businesses, that there's a whole infrastructure of entrepreneurship in the Hasidic community. Remember, it's a community that does not ask people or want people to go through a traditional college route. So you're not going to find most people heading in certain directions, which means that there's a huge spirit of innovation and entrepreneurship that emerges. And what happens is you have a big business that sells stuff on Amazon, let's say. Somebody comes in to write software programs for that business. Somebody else comes in to connect them to outsourcing in India. There was a guy with a stand there. I don't know if you saw it.
I saw that. They was
outsourcing India, right?
from
So
India, right?
I was schmoozing with him for a little bit. What do you do? Well, yeah, I have 2 cities in India where I know people, and I connect people to people there. Meaning, what I think people don't appreciate is that the Hasidic community overall, not just Satmar, but Satmar certainly as the largest Hasidic community is very prominent in this regard. The vast majority of people are fairly well off and make decent livings. I'm not talking, meaning people have in their minds the image of the incredibly wealthy person or people who are all in poverty. But the reality is the exact opposite. It's not 2 humps at either end of the distribution. It's a nice normal curve with a lot of people clustered in the middle making good livings in all sorts of businesses. And that really was what I just came to the business expo because Shmuel Stern invited me and he said, why don't you come look at it? And I just was walking around just enjoying looking at it. But one of the things that you see when you walk around is that you really have that middle, that huge middle, not just the people who had booths there, but the people who are visiting there, who are coming to give their business card at the different booths. You have architects, you have people who are involved in stone flooring, who are building cabinetry, who are building warehouses. At the same time as you have people in technology and IT and people in video and sound mixing, meaning you see every element of the economy. Every place where you can see something, you do see someone jumping in. And this is a strength of the Hasidic community, is that it really is a community in a way that very few places are. And that means that people are really very aware of what is needed within their own community. And so it's very, like, you open up the book of Satmar businesses and you look through it and there's like an ad, help support the Satmar economy and help, every time you open a business, you're providing a service within the community. It's actually a very, it's a nice thing to see. So that, to me, what struck me was not the very wealthy people. It was the fact that you have throughout the middle this incredibly wide range of businesses.
I heard this from a Satmar businessman. Maybe one of you can clarify that. And he basically said there was a conversation between the Satmar Rebbe and Rav Aaron Cutler of Lakewood of blessed memory. And I think the Satmar Rebbe said that, the students of Lakewood will end up working for his Hasidim. Are you familiar with that quote?
It's Shmuel Stern, if I may jump in.
Yes.
There's a story, I'm not sure if it's Rabbi Aaron Cutler, that there was a Rosh Yeshiva here, I think more Hamish Yeshiva, where the Buchanan would would take some kind of degrees through male college at that time. They ordered the books and they took the tests. And that Rosh Yeshiva Rabbi told Satmar Rabbi, why don't you Bochum do the same? So the Rabbi said, let your guys be the professionals, and my guys will be the businessman. They will do your professionals. And that's and the joke goes that this is how it turns out, that they come again with and we don't with the accountants. So yeah.
So, but from what I understand, the Satmar Rebbe encouraged people to go into business because he realized this is an important lifeline for the community. So that's what, from what I understand, that's where you have some very, very successful business people. And I think, Professor, you've studied the Haredi community. There's a big difference between the Haredi community here and in Israel. There's a lot more business spirit, even though I think it's changing in Israel these days too.
Yeah, Israel is a very different ballgame. There's all sorts of pressures in Israel that there aren't in the United States. Once you have politics involved in something, it becomes a zero-sum game because everybody's fighting over control and over politics and over funding, and it puts different types of pressures on the community, right? If you would have to go to the army in order to work, right, that's not possible. The army is a secularizing influence to begin with. These things just don't exist here. It's a completely different situation in the United States, and it, we really can't with certain sorts of things you can compare Israel Haredi community to the United States Haredi community, but in this certainly not. You're right, they're completely different.
Let me turn to Rabbi Niederman. When I was impressed, there's divisions between the Sabbath community to Rav Aaron and Rav Zalman Leah, but it seems like everybody put aside the difference. Everybody was working together at this expo. I think that's one of the beauties of it, from what I can see.
This was actually organized by the Kehillah of our Rebbe, Rav Zalman Leah, and I have to thank really the Kehillah, and especially in Galat, like a businessman who put away everything for 8 months. He has been energizing. His name is Yoel Braver, who's basically making sure that everything happens. But you are right that everybody was here. Everybody was here, and you had people here from the tri-state area, and both. You're right that everybody participated over here. And I just want to go back to what you said, that the Rebbe encouraged. Yes, very clearly, the Rebbe encouraged for early on, when the Rebbe came here, the Rebbe encouraged, and you heard the message with Rabbi Aaron Zichron Levrucha, that the Rebbe Zichron Levrucha told Rabbi Aaron Zichron Levrucha that my task, the way I see it, is to aufstellen ehrliche Balbatim who are going to learn, have a shiur in the morning and at night, and during the day to work. That I've been encouraged for the people to go, and only a small portion he agreed to have a koilel. Those are really really there to commit themselves to avoidus Hashem, in avoidus Haklal, in ebunim and melamdam, and there's a whole public sector, religious public sector, Kanai Nahara, that comes out from the kollel. But the rest of them, not everybody is suited of there to do that. The Rebbe pushed and encouraged that they should go to work.
We're looking at beyond just the Satmar Business Expo, the second annual one that took place, but the growth and how the Hasidic community, especially the Satmar Hasidic community, has really made some major marks in the business world, and with the impression from certain media, including the New York Times, is that they don't have the skills. They certainly do, as evidenced by the Satmar Expo this week. We're speaking live with Rabbi David Niederman. He's the ex-director of the UJO, the United Jewish Organizations of Williamsburg. He's been there since 1989. Professor Moshe Krakowski. He's at Yeshiva University. He studies American Haredi education. And Shmuel Mordechai Stern is an Askon with the UJO of Williamsburg and the Satmar community. And we're going to be right back. Don't go away. Stay tuned. when we come back, if you'd like to participate, if you were part of the expo. And by the way, I met a lot of our listeners there. People said to me, I grew up listening to your program, still do. It was a pleasure to see so many of our listeners there. If you were part of the expo, we'd love to hear from you. Call us at 212-769-1925, 212-769-1925. You want to email is a wonderful way to get some of your questions answered. Zev@talklinenetwork.com, Zev@talklinenetwork.com. We're going to be right back. Don't go away. Stay tuned.
Hello.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Talkline with Zev Brenner, America's premier Jewish broadcast, on the air since 1981. Please call us with your questions and comments at 212-769-1925. That's 212-769-1925. Or email us at zevbrenner@gmail.com.
And we're back. We're looking at the Satmar community, especially with its business acumen, that the wonderful second annual Satmar Business Expo took place in New Jersey. With us live is Rabbi David Niederman, the Executive Director of United Jewish Organizations of Williamsburg since 1989. Professor Moshe Krakowski is an expert on the American Haredi community, and he's with Yeshiva University's Fanya Gottesfeld Heller's Doctoral Studies, Azrieli Graduate School, and Shmuel Mordechai Stern is an Askon. He's an active at the UJ of Williamsburg and the Satmar community. Tell us, how was this businesses chosen? Because there was so much diversity, whether you have some larger companies, some mid-sized companies, as Professor Krakowski had indicated. You had people in travel, and you saw videos, and you saw some high-tech companies, and a lot of construction and financial companies. How were they selected, and was there any category you'd like to see added to the future?
I think what happened over here, it was open to everyone. And the idea of this was a twofold one. One is to connect business to businesses so they can make business between themselves. And the other one was focused on businesses that are looking for employees, and by being at one place, people are seeking employment, will have an opportunity to look and speak to the the businesses themselves. So, for example, the UJO also had a booth over there, and more than 300 people passed by to participate in our program of workforce development, which includes trainings as well as direct job placements. So there are businesses, who are the businesses themselves decide that we want to come, but of course, the idea was to reach out to, as the professor said, to reach out that we should have every segment, the large one and the small ones and the middle, so that all of them connect together in, as we say, v'yasi kilam agide echos, to put together a force to help employment and prosperity in the community.
Professor Krakowski, you ever see, like, this was from the Satmar community, like maybe a global or at least an American Hasidic Expo? Is that something which is possible?
I'm sure it's possible. Everything's possible in theory, but I think we all know that in the Jewish community, getting even three people together in the same room is sometimes difficult, and getting people from a wide range of communities can also be difficult. But
I'm talking about for business. So business might be easier. We're not having a religious convention,
right? So for business, I'm sure. I would
just want to say, this was really not a show of force, so to speak, and not to tell New York Times, here you have living testimony that what you are saying is just garbage. That was not the purpose. The purpose was really to try to help people, and rather than having so many people in the room and nothing is accomplished, these type of events, if this is replicated, and we hope, and we will provide the know-how and our experience to any community, any Hasidic community, any community who is seeking that, and it will be much more productive and really bring more money into the community in order to be able to raise our families.
So let's bring the elephant in the room. New York Times. You know how many people came over and you said, look at this. They said these are the exact words I heard. It's Kiddush Hashem, is sanctification of God's name. look what the New York Times writes about us, and look, were they invited to come here? Were they invited to come there? Because I think it would be excellent for them to have covered the expo. But were they invited, or they're invited and declined to attend?
This was not open for general press. It was a business event, and so they could have found, if they know everything about our community. I'm sure they know about this as well if they want.
Well, don't assume they know about it. I mean, it may not have been a bad idea to invite them, right? To something popular. There's nothing negative that you can really say about a conference. Let me tell you something. There was energy in the room. It wasn't just they had exhibits, and I've gone to a lot of different events. But I found that there was an excitement, there was a liveliness, a chiyus, there was something very special going on that was there. It was palpable. You could touch the spirit that was in the room, and that's what impressed me.
Zev, I want to tell you, the New York Times found fault in so many places where we don't know what they found. So I'm not sure they wouldn't find anything here. So,
but no, I would disagree. The issue is not they'll find fault because it came to a point that you basically say we don't care, we can't care what you're going to say because you see there's agenda against our way of life. But I want you to say that if they wanted to cease, and actually, I'm not going to go into details, but we had discussions, and we had discussions with New York Times, and the discussions we also spoke. You chose to cover one aspect that you believe that you want to cover, but you know how much good is in the community. And why don't you ever cover a nice story what's happening in the Jewish community? They have spoken to Professor, I'm not sure, but they might have spoken to you. They've spoken to me. They've spoken to Rabbi Zev and so many others who told them to look really and see the spirit of what we are doing, the outcome of our education, and basically discussing the outcome which was evident at the event. They chose not to write an iota about that.
Were they invited to attend, though? That's what I'm trying to ascertain. Was it an invitation to their writers to come and see for themselves the business spirit of the community?
I would like to jump in and say something. The New York Times articles are about something that I know very well. I don't know everything very well, but what happens in Hasidic schools, Hasidic boys' schools, I do. And even if you're in the Hasidic community, you know what happens in your school. You don't know what happens across many schools. And I'm in many schools. I'm in, a lot of different schools. And I can tell you that even had the New York Times been invited to come to the Business Expo, what they would have written about it would bear no resemblance to what you're describing, because what I see in schools bears no resemblance to what they describe. So Rabbi Niederman may be right that they chose to ignore all sorts of positive things and just talk about the negative, but I actually think that the New York Times was just straight out dishonest. I know that they were straight out dishonest about things that they did know full well, and that they actually wrote things that they knew weren't true about Hasidic schools. And there's certain instances where there's actual evidence of this. And if they would have showed up at the Business Expo, the story would have been, completely unrecognizable to anybody who was there. So
let me ask you, Shmuel Mordechai, were they invited? Were other media invited? It would seem to me you have such a powerful showcase of what's happening in the Hasidic community. Why not pursue my needs? Why not show it to everybody? Shmuel Mordechai, were they invited?
Oh, he's muted.
You have to unmute your microphone. I think you muted your microphone.
You were not invited. You showed up uninvited. We didn't invite press, period.
Why not?
Because handling press is a whole different thing. We don't have I had we didn't have the capacity to handle them. It was a press you need to handle. You have to get them contact. The whole thing. The business event. We didn't have the capacity to invite them.
I think it's not a question of capacity. Shmuel Mordche, when you were there, you have the capacity to handle them well. But the issue is this was about business, and the businesses who wanted to do business, the people who wanted to accomplish. Once you have press, it takes away from what it is.
Actually, forgive me. I would say having press would not take away, because people are still going to do business. The press would only cover and see the kinds of businesses that were there, the transitions, the transactions that take place. So being a media person, and by the way, there's a precedent that years ago when Ed Koch was mayor, and there was a question where, they say the Hasidic community doesn't have the political clout that they attribute to them. What do? They invited media to come, and they showed Hasidic weddings of 75,000 pieces of gefilte fish and 100,000 challahs. And what was the reason why they did it? Yeah, and you smile, Rabbi Niederman. And the reason being is because they wanted to show that the Hasidic community has the political clout by showing this. So here is a situation when we're under attack by the New York Times and other media. Why not use this great event to show the power, show the business acumen of the community? It puts everything to rest when you see it. Forgive me, Professor. Tell me if I'm wrong.
You're not wrong. I think it would have been very nice for maybe not the New York Times, but for other people to see. I think that there are a lot of people who simply don't know what the community is like. If you're living in the community, you know that there's businesses everywhere, and many more businesses than the ones that were at the expo. Up and down Williamsburg, you can walk and you can see it's a thriving economy, and it's not a poor community. And I think that most people outside of the community have this impression of it being a very in poverty community. I think that there were a lot of people who would be very, very surprised, and it would have been nice to have media see it. I agree with you. I think maybe next year they should invite some people.
Okay. We have two consultants already on that subject. Thank you very much.
Are we overruled? Or?
No.
I'm happy to, let's put it this way. You did something beautiful, and it was something which grows. I think next year you may need a bigger space than what you had this year, because I would assume that people tell me this was much better than last year. You had much more people, much more exhibits, much more business being done. I assume the third annual Satmar Business Expo was going to be even bigger, maybe a bigger venue. So why not invite the world and see for yourself?
Thank you. We take your offer.
Now, one thing I did notice, though, are you going to also have a Satmar Business Expo for the women? I know this was almost all exclusively male. Will there be one for business in the Hasidic community, in the Satmar community?
Not planned yet.
Not planned. Is that something which I'm implanting an idea? Because I know there are a lot of businesses that are owned by women in the community, too, that are also thriving and growing.
Yes, Baruch Hashem.
But okay, so
they have their channels. They have the chance of communication. There's so many PTAs and parties, Tzedukah parties and others, and so they find the time and the ability to communicate very well.
No, I understand, but here you.
But a point good taken.
Okay, so next year we have two challenges: getting the media involved, maybe a separate Women's Day or Women's Conference as well.
Shmuel, we'll have to find a consultant, a woman.
I'm sure we can find such a person. Shmuel Mordche, what's been your biggest challenge in putting together and working with the expo? What's been the biggest challenge that you had?
This time, go back to your first question. I think, by Jews, we say we answer one question with the other. I think your second question answered the first one. So there's one thing. If we would invite everyone, they would start questioning that one. So I think just since you raised it. So, okay, that's for and the challenges, they were working 8 months. If you have to get businesses, you have to talk to everyone, get them their booths, get them and the biggest challenge was turning away people the last 2 weeks. So we had we're maxed out to 350 booths, and businesses were knocking on the doors. We still want to join, and we're unable to accommodate them. The challenge is to have a big enough space to accommodate everyone. At the expo, when you were there, you saw like 30 people were waiting to check in. I mean, checking in so many people at once. We had 6 machines, a special system set up to check in everyone, and how businesses should communicate with each other while they're scanning the information. But the system couldn't work. It was so many people. Everyone was overwhelmed. So it took a while to check in. For the last 2-3 hours, they even stopped checking in. So the gates started letting people. So we have a number of 5,300 people joined. This was the number of check-ins, but many people, since they were waiting so long, they were let in anyway. So the challenge is really the huge demand that it's hard to meet when you do something like this for the community, and people know it was successful last year. I had businesses coming in that told me last year I was here as an attendee, and we made some contact, so we knew we must have a booth here, and they told me someone told me I got 40 asks for big quotes for business deals, and someone had a simple booth there. So the challenge is to being able to accommodate everyone.
So let me ask you this question. Do we have any idea how many Satmar businesses are out there? Because you said you had 350, you turned many away. Do we have an idea of how many businesses exist?
No, we don't.
I can tell you, I'll respond. Sam, I'll respond. As I told you, the Rabbi Zechron Rucha was pushing back in the beginning of the early 70s.
Rabbi David Niederman of the UJO of Williamsburg is speaking. We're looking at what's happening in the growth of the Satmar community as far as the business directory. So you have a business directory, Rabbi Niederman, which has...
I'm just telling you, there was a business directory going back in the beginning of the 80s, where you had more than at that time, more than 700 businesses. So you can imagine what it is today. But to your question before, no, there's not a current business directory.
Any plans for that? Or if it wasn't there, is it bringing it back?
Again, this is wonderful. This show is wonderful. Plans, good ideas. Some will follow, and some I'm not sure.
We'll have to put Shmuel Mordche, get him some new projects to work on. But
so we do. The expo actually published a book after the expo from all the participants and whoever wants to advertise there. But I think we should go back to Moshe's point at the beginning. You actually didn't see here like the real big ones, the real estate, the healthcare, the big healthcare guys, the people, the B&H you didn't see, the Amazon, the big retailers, and Amazon. So this is just a small snapshot of mostly mid-sized businesses who are business to business. They look for business to business networking, but this is just I would say 10 or 15% of what is out there.
Did you reach out to some of the big businesses like B&H, which is a powerhouse, and others to participate?
I was not involved in every bit of that, so I can't tell you, but I don't think so, no.
Okay, so this was more for the medium to small size businesses, which is what Professor Krakowski, that you said you saw the power of the, and here's the amazing thing. If you go into a Jewish neighborhood like Williamsburg, you go into Borough Park, you see a lot of small businesses that are operating. In lots of other areas, you see much more of the big giants that dominate. That's the beauty of the community, is that you have a lot of small businesses that operate to serve the community as opposed to some gigantic stores.
Correct.
Yes,
Professor Krakowski.
Yeah, no, I think that's right. I think that probably you would. I don't know if I could say for sure, but if I had to guess, the average business there was 5 to 10 people in the business. Some of them as big as 15, 20 people, and then maybe outsourcing other things elsewhere. You weren't looking at the really, really massive businesses, and that's actually, I think much more typical than those big people. People know B&H, right? They know, but B&H doesn't need to be there. The people at this expo, they're there. I was talking to some people about what do you get out of being here? I was talking to some guy. He said, well, I came last year. I didn't know what it was. I came last year, and I saw right away afterwards, I got more people coming to my business because they saw me here. I didn't even know you did this. I didn't even know that you were in this business. Meaning if you're the big guy, you don't need to be at a business expo necessarily. But if you are a medium-sized business and you want to grow and you want to let people know, let's say the guy who's doing created an app for deliveries so that you can know where, if you're a store, you want to know where all your deliveries are at any point. He wants people to know that he exists. He wants other people in the community, if they have a business that has deliveries, to know that his business can help you plan your deliveries, track your deliveries, know where they're up to. He wants everybody to know that. So it's for those sorts of businesses that a business expo really is valuable. And I think, I was trying to find out from people, like, what are you getting out of being here? I was just there as a interested observer. I know a little bit about the community, but and that's not necessarily my area. So just schmoozing with people, and that's what you hear. That's what you understand. Going back to education, you see that the degree of education is almost there was almost no correlation between the degree of education and the type of business, the success of the business. How did you learn how to code? I don't know. I took a couple of classes. I got coding for dummies. Now I'm not a dummy. And like there are a lot of self-made people who are taking classes. There was a booth there. I don't know if you saw the booth for Viewpoint Academy. Viewpoint Academy, they run classes for people who want to get training in a particular area. So they had a booth there to sell their classes, but a lot of people who were there had taken classes by them and, developed whatever skill it was that they were looking to pursue. So, I think that's, for something like this, that's the benefit. And that's what you're going to see show up, at the across the board at the expo.
You mentioned earlier, Professor, that you go to a lot of the schools. What schools do you go to? What do you do in the schools?
So I do educational research. I can't say which school. When you file a plan in the university to do research, you file with something called an IRB, an Institutional Review Board, and they govern the ethics of your research. And one of the things that you do is you give schools anonymity. So I can't say specifically which schools, but I've been in schools, in boys' elementary schools, in the major Hasidic groups in Williamsburg and Borough Park, and I've seen a number of different schools at this point, quite a few, and I've spoken to people and even more. I have a pretty good sense of again, I look at boys' elementary schools. So.
Is there a book in the offing?
Yeah. Slowly but surely. I have a lot of responsibilities, but Mir Hashem, little by little, getting there with it. Yes.
Now, Rabbi Niederman, the expo focused, I wouldn't say exclusive, but almost exclusively in businesses in the New York area, metropolitan area. But from what I understand, the Satmar community has been expanding because you have New York, you have Williamsburg. Even in Williamsburg, they've expanded, and you have Monroe, and I believe in Florida there's a community that's either started or starting. So you're seeing all kinds of movement, not just in the New York area. Tell us about the growth of the Satmar community in other areas outside of New York, and what that means for future expos. Will there be an expo in other parts of the country eventually because of that, like Florida?
Actually, believe it or not, we met people from the UK, from the community. We had a person from Australia who came and participate. Yes, I mean the community. It's what you see expanding is expanding mostly in numbers. And the numbers automatically expansion in space, but it was geared towards the tri-state area where there's tremendous growth, and so you had New York and New Jersey where you see the growth and the expansion. So people from Florida, there's some movement. There are a few, three developments that are at different stages over there. I'm sure in the first few years they'll come here, and then they'll have their own over there.
But this is just the beginning. When did you start working on next year's expo?
I'm not involved in it. Sam should answer that.
And this year they worked for 8 months, so I guess pretty soon, like after the Yom they start again.
Start again. You same venue, or are you planning for a bigger venue for next year?
I think they still have probably options to take more space nearby this venue. So, but it loses the purpose because this is one of the challenges. I only saw probably 40-50% businesses that were there, and I spent there from 11 a.m. to 8 p.m. I walked around briskly. So I'm not sure. I don't know if when you expand it's a challenge. So people don't see each other. It becomes harder. So we'll have to figure out how if they should expand it or do two. So this is a challenge.
Oh, they maybe have 2 a year.
Perhaps if they're willing to volunteer, if Mr. Braver is willing to give up his real estate business, maybe we can do two.
You were going to say, Rabbi Niederman, 2 a year, or so this was maybe one in the summer and one in the winter time.
No, I think we should do, but of course there's a lot of things. The experience brings ideas, and it should be ways. And I'm sure they're looking into how to organize that. People should know with a directory or some sort of a directory that aisle 1 is these type of business. Aisle 5 is these type of business. So although there is so many booths and you can't go through, easier ways to identify where you want to go, which should interest you.
I like that idea. I think it's important. You streamline it so people know real estate this aisle, you have travel this aisle, and the other categories, business loans, another, etc. Let me ask you before we go.
I want to just finish for one thing, about what I learned very early in my when we started the workforce development division. So the people in the real estate, I arrested one of the real estate developers in the community, and I said, you're going to spend with me an hour and tell me what type of parts in the real estate industry can we train people who have no degrees, but basically the know-how they have, and Baruch Hashem, they learned, they learned all these years, so their mind, Baruch Hashem, works. What do you think is something, an area to train? So the guy told me, AutoCAD, drafting an AutoCAD. So I went and I got a Nadvin who gave the money to buy the licenses, and we taught AutoCAD to Yingalat, 21, 22, 23. 6 months down the road, they were already were employed, and 2 years later, they have already been involved in designing constructions projects in Greenpoint and Williamsburg. 4 years down the line, they were getting a lot from that course that opened their own businesses, employing their Chavayrim who trained with them together, and they hired an architect who signs off the reviews heavily plans and signs it off, but was prepared and drafted by these young Yingalat.
Very nice. Before we'll let you go, let me turn to Professor Moshe Krakowski. You study the Haredim community. Would you say that the Satmar community has the most business acumen, most businesses? What about the other groups? Who else is out there?
I don't know. That I don't know. I study when it comes to the businesses and there I'm an observer, meaning I'm not in businesses looking at the economy, at the cash flow, at how money moves around. You need somebody to do that. It actually deserves its own study. But I'm looking at schools, and then I'm seeing the other things incidentally by as part of the larger orbit. But I can, I know the reputation is that Satmar is very business savvy, certainly, but I don't know.
All right, no, it's a good question. The final question you wrote by David Niederman: is there any courses that some of the kids in the Satmar High School that are encouraged to take vocationally?
That's not in high school. Usually, in high school, the girls are being taught different courses, which they use when they come out and ask people in businesses. They will tell you if they're looking for a secretary, an assistant. They would take somebody who graduated the Besruchel school, but it's more geared. Our employment is geared for Yingalat, which is after they get married, to teach them different professions.
Oh, so what professions do you teach them, and what the apparatus is used?
It's basically we taught already, as we taught, for example, real estate management. We taught real estate real estate licenses. Okay, and I can tell you my disappointment when we had a course and we were all looking, okay, how many people are going to graduate with a certificate? And many of them just dropped out, not because they dropped out because they could not take it or could not make it. They learned so much about real estate that they decided, let me not be bogged down with being a broker. Let me make deals, and they went into the business. And so we had photography, we had programming. Okay, I remember that when we did the Microsoft professional course, and the guy when they took the final test, was blown away. Out of 16, 13 of them passed the test the first time. The guy said he didn't see it. So all type of bookkeeping and not accounting, but bookkeeping and other type of businesses. Professions.
Anyway, I thank you for sharing some insight. Again, I was very impressed with the Satmar Business Expo. It was the second annual one. The third one is going to be planned. And we've been speaking with Rabbi David Niederman. He's been, since 1989, the executive director of the United Jewish Organization of Williamsburg, helped build that up to a powerhouse that it is today. Professor Moshe Krakowski studies American Haredi Judaism and education. He's at Yeshiva University. And Shmuel Mordechai Stern is an Askon with the UJ of Williamsburg and the Satmar community. And thank you for helping putting together our broadcast tonight, Shmuel Mordechai. I look forward to having all of you back again. Thank you for joining us.
Goodbye.
Bye.